Hi, One Hour Smart Home here, and today we're going to show you how to install a floating shelf. So a floating shelf has a concealed support system, so it looks like it's floating on the wall. And how that works is you've got a groove in the back of the shelf here, and then this bracket which goes into those two holes and conceals through the shelf and supports it on the wall so that it is completely floating, or gives the effect that it's floating. So first thing that we need to do is find the studs in the wall so that we can secure this bracket. So to do that, I'm going to use a stud finder.
We pick the approximate height for the shelf and then use the stud finder to find the studs. Now, I'll put a link to this stud finder below, but most of them operate in the same way, where you use them to go across the wall, and when the lights light up, that indicates that you have found a stud. Go ahead and mark that with a pencil and then find your next stud to mount the shelf. Depending on the construction of your home, typically studs are located 24 to 16 inches on center. So keep sliding the stud finder until you find the next stud. There we go, we found it, so we go ahead and mark our second stud with a pencil. Now we're ready to start hanging the floating shelf bracket. We want to make sure our studs line up with the holes on the bracket, so we're going to hold it up and make sure that it'll fit where we marked the studs on the wall and that there are two holes aligned with those studs. We're going to plan that out so we can secure one of the holes and start getting the shelf bracket mounted to the wall. We use one hand to hold the bracket and the screw, and the other for the drill driver. Now we're going to screw the screw into the stud, but not all the way. We want to be able to rotate the bracket afterwards so that it holds it up and we can secure the other screw in the floating shelf bracket. We gently rotate the shelf into position, and we're going to check for level before we secure that second screw. So make sure that you've got everything aligned, that the shelf is level, and then we're going to be ready to secure that second screw and install the floating shelf. Now we can secure the second screw for the floating shelf and make sure that we tighten up the other one so both screws are securely fastened to the floating shelf bracket and installed into the studs. Now we take the hanging shelf and slide it onto the hanging shelf bracket. You can see the two holes where the posts will slide into for the hanging shelf. So we turn it over and go ahead and slide it in. Now on the top there are two screw holes. So if you want to have those concealed, you should put those on the top, because you can cover them up with whatever you're putting on top of the shelf, or if it's high enough, you just won't see the screw holes. Slide the shelf into position against the wall. Now the floating shelf is installed, and we check to make sure that it's firmly pressed up against the wall. Now all we're going to have to do is install the two screws that hold the shelf into the bracket. We insert the two screws that will secure the floating shelf to the floating shelf bracket. After they're inserted, all we do is tighten them down and make sure that we've got a snug fit with both screws in the floating shelf. Once you tighten down these two final screws, your installation of the floating shelf is complete. Now you can start loading it up with your favorite items, and you can be sure that it will hold since you've got it connected to those two studs. So if you like this video, please give us that thumbs up. If you want to support us, subscribe, and we'll include a link to the floating shelf that we used below if you want to replicate this project. So thank you for watching, and we will see you next time.